Hello everyone. I wanted to go over the GMade SR style beadlocks, the ones that are made out of stamped steel. I've been really impressed with these, and these in particular have been apart I think 5 times already. So had different tires on them, trying different foams and things like that. So just wanted to do a quick video on them and how they kind of go together. I may not go through the entire process of putting them together, but just kind of want to highlight some things on there. One thing in particular that is different than these versus some of the other beadlocks you run into are that instead of having this body of it threaded, or this piece over here, the backing plate threaded, what they do is they actually have captive areas where the nuts go in. So one thing that's nice about this is if you strip a nut, you don't end up having to throw this away. You just have to put another nut on there. And the other nice thing is that totally different from some of the manufacturers out there is they actually give you extra ones of these, which is super nice. Because I have stripped maybe 1 or 2 of them, but for the most part they're okay. Most of these SR style beadlocks, they all include this centerpiece, really heavy and stout, and this backing piece. What's different about the different styles is the stamped piece in the front. And these are the matte black, the SR05 style that are out there. And just to give you a little bit of overview of what happens in terms of assembly is you take a tire, for this case is the J Concepts landmines. I put the dual stage foams on these. I've already assembled 3 of them already, but just want to go through some of the steps on these, and I'm going to kind of jump through some of this. But basically you shoehorn this piece in the body of the wheel of the tire. So there's the centerpiece, the heaviest part of the wheel that I've already put in there. And you got to make sure that, like where that harder inner stage of that foam is, just make sure it's consistent across there, and then make sure it's consistent like toward the backing plate, toward the back of it as well. The back will always be deeper than the front. I know I had to check myself on that as well. But one thing also, these J Concepts tires, the bead is super nice. It's really easy to set into these beadlocks. One thing that I have noticed with Proline is the bead is a little bit thicker. Like these are interesting. So, and they also have a inner bead and an outer bead. So make sure you're hitting that inner bead and still allowing that outer bead to kind of hug on the outside of your piece. But I'll get to that next step right after this. So the next step is putting the backing plate on. Looking at this is the backing plate, the part that hooks up your wheels and your hexes and everything. But just try to get your alignment on here. What I usually just do is hold it up to light to make sure everything is lining up, because you got basically 3 pieces of metal to go through. But that's what that's done. Next step is putting the front plate on here, and this is kind of the trickiest part, because you're getting down to the 3rd piece of metal you've got to go through. But basically what you're going to end up doing is you've got these longer screws right here, and you want to put them in the way that you can actually go through. I'm sorry. So these go in here. Usually I do and this is one thing that if you don't watch the instructions, you're not going to understand that. So these go through there. You work them through, you kind of turn the pieces to make sure everything lines up, and you get them through all the way to the back. So 2 screws straight across from each other. These are the longer screws. Got them through to the back. So what I do is I just hold those like that point. And then what I need to do is I need to get like a nut started on both of those 2 side by side there. So that has both the nuts started on the screws. Now this is a perfect time too to find your inner bead and your outer bead, And what I do is I just kind of pull this out through here to make sure it's just sitting on the inner bead and not the outer bead. Sorry for the mess. Okay, so that's sitting on that inner bead versus the outer bead, and that also just allows your tire and wheel to be consistent, so you don't have any bulges out through here. Your back one, at least on these GMades, not too important on like how it sits, because it usually sits really good. But the back does. I mean, you do have an inner and outer bead, so sometimes I do kind of play with this a little bit. When I first assembled these, I put them on some Traxxas Canyon Trails and really had to dig in there and try to make sure that it was hitting. This is also a good time that if you want to roll your rear wheel to make your foam set in really good. That's what I do with those. Okay, the next piece is you want to crank these down pretty good, the two across from each other, because these are mainly just your I call them the drawing screws. It just draws your beadlock in. I'm going to get it in enough so it's pretty much just snug, because the main screws that you're going to put in there are a lot shorter than these longer screws. It'll look basically like that. They're already drawn in with those longer screws. Next step is you put your hexes or your faux lug nuts on there, lug nut screws, they look like these guys. And you should have, once you draw those in enough, you should have those protruding enough to be able to start a nut on those. Once you do that, the GMade gives you a special tool to start these, to actually lock these guys down. And GMade gives you like a special little hex driver there that fits on your 2.5 hex wrench. So, and you just want to get these guys started for once. So what I normally do is I just kind of go through here and tighten this up. Just using my finger to just tighten them up, just to get them really started. Once you get the black longer screws locked down, and then you also start all of your hex nuts, what I do is I go ahead and tighten down the hexes that you have on there. So those are already made like the concentric circle and lock down that bead really good. So what you do is you just make sure that all those are tight. Usually there's not any specific torque. I just do like a little oomph and then lock them down there. So then once you get those in there, pretty much everything is locked down. But you have one last step, and that is you need to take out your starter screws and replace those with the corrected, the actual hex nuts. So you just back them out, and then what I do is I just take my finger on the back and follow that screw down, and then hold that captive nut there, hold it in there so that it doesn't fall out, and then I just replace it with the hex screw. And once you replace those with the correct screws, you just snug them down. And then you go through it mainly just like you do a regular car wheel, like a full-size car wheel. You go do the star pattern. And it locks everything down good and nice. Everything is locked down good. And in my opinion, these beadlocks, they're like the steel RC 4-wheel drive, but they're built, I think, as well or better, and plus they're less expensive. These beadlocks are under $20 a pair, and I've usually purchased them through Hobby Recreation Products out of Utah, and normally get them even though I'm here in the Eastern time zone. I usually get them within a couple days after ordering. Those guys are really good about getting things out. But just wanted to share this with you. I know there's no real videos online about how these actually go together. There's some quick shots of how they're made and things like that, but I wanted to get a video out there on how they actually go together. So thank you.